The meta of airplane design in Hearts of Iron 4 on the very latest version. In fact, not only the latest version, but I'm currently playing the beta patch, the future version of this game that will be coming out in the future. So this not only is present proof, but it's future proof as well. Not only will I be showing you the best designs for planes, full stop, but I'm also going to show you as you progress in the game what designs you should move on to. So it's not always a matter of this is the best design, please build this plane. It's also a matter of what is the best plane for 1936, what is the best plane for 1939, what's the best game for late game 1943, 1944, 1945 into the future. At the end of the day, the most important time of the game to have the best fighter is around about 1939, 1940, because that's where all the combat is happening initially. But then later on, 1941, you've got your Barbarossa. So to begin with, 1936, Germany. There's a bunch of technology you want to grab almost immediately. And that technology is going to be survivability studies to add armor on. And then secondly, even though it's way ahead of time, heavy machine guns. Heavy machine guns do everything the light machine guns do, but do more overall firepower. They basically make light machine guns obsolete. So my advice to you, even though it's way ahead of time and it will take over a year longer, my advice to you is to research that from the very start of the game. Now, this will occupy a slot, so that's a downside. However, the earlier you get machine guns and the earlier you get that design and start producing that aircraft that has heavy machine guns, you will be out dogfighting the Allies in every possible opportunity. So the earlier you get this, the better. The only one side when you don't want to do this is maybe you're not focusing as much on your Air Force, and maybe you're going more tank, more ground, more anti-air based ground, or maybe you focus on Navy. So this is coming in with kind of a single player Germany mindset. And the vast majority of the XP you're going to get is going to be from the Spanish Civil War. So at the very start of the game, you can get a tiny little bit of XP, potentially, if you exercise your planes. And potentially, too, there is a way you can get a little bit more extra, too, if you go for effective training programs, which means exercising the planes exercises and gives a little bit more XP. Let me just double check if that's the case. 0.24, 0.3. Wow, that is completely not worth it. This is not a reliable way of getting XP. Another question that gets asked me quite frequently, how many mils do you put on fighter planes at the very start of the game? It all depends on how heavy you want to go on the planes. If you want to completely dominate the air and have air superiority continuously, you probably want to assign a minimum of 15. If you want to go a little bit lighter and focus on interception, 10 or 5. But once again, you are never going to have air superiority with those specific numbers. Another option that seems to be really effective, that seems to be getting used more recently, is going for the Chief of the Air Force and going for the Air Reformer. This will gain you an existing ticking amount of XP, in this case 0.3 daily, which really does add up. That can unlock you probably about 2 or 3 extra doctrines before the start of the war, so that's crucially important. Okay, Spanish Civil War. Go is going to happen in July 1936, and this is where you're going to get the most of your air experience. To be fair, the amount of air XP you're going to get with this is insane. We'll go with the normal route by sending them to the Nationalists. In this case, if you look really closely, how many can we send? We can send 2 air wings. What I'd recommend is sending your tactical bombers. The truth is, they're going to have fighters and they're going to intercept some of your bombing runs. But the truth behind it is, this is going to do you the most damage and gain you the most air XP, where fighters don't generate as much air experience due to the fact they have to be participating in dogfights to gain you XP. So my advice to you is sending the tactical bombers, start doing damage, and you can see in this case, it generate loads and loads and loads of experience. And you can see now, the ticking amount of XP that you get from this is absolutely insane. The amount of air XP you get from volunteers is just insane. You can unlock all of your air doctrines before the start of 939, which just gives a massive advantage for you. Spanish Civil War is a good amount of XP. It'll gain you 90% XP, but don't forget about China and Japan. Don't worry too much about who you're sending to China or Japan. At the end of the day, you're going to be helping both sides out by grinding air XP, so it's a win-win. I like to send it to China. Grab there's an airport, I think in Beijing, you can use that one, or you can want the one used in the south. Send tactical bombers and do lots and lots of damage. There is a strategy early game where you make really heavy bomber style tactical bombers. Something like this. You've got to go 2 bomb bays and 2 bomb locks. And then what you result in here is a massive amount of cast damage, 18 cast damage per strike. And then what you can basically do is reinforce these specific planes to the Spanish Civil War, and the amount of air damage you will do per strike is going to be absolutely insane. Just be aware that these planes, outside of a situation where you have air superiority, aren't going to be very effective. They'll get shot down and they're very expensive. You don't want to lose such an expensive plane. This is specifically a plane just used for those civil war scenarios where you don't have a lot of contesting air. But as you can see here, look at the air XP, just shoots up massively. Okay, let's just play with a hypothetical now. Let's say it's 1937, halfway through, and we've reached the situation where we have locked heavy machine guns. So, what's the early plane? 1936 to 1939 plane. What is that going to be? So, we're going to select our basic airframe here and build it. In this case, it'll be quad heavy machine guns. Quad heavy machine guns. The best possible single engine we can get, giving the most maximum speed, which is Mark II single engine. Top it off as well, you've got a choice here. To get the most optimal stats for early game, you want self-sealing, which is it's kind of a pain in the ass because it costs rubber. And then simultaneously go for armor, which reduces your overall speed. That's the best combination to begin with, and that just gives you just enough thrust and weight and enough firepower. If you produce a good 400, 500 of these, up to 1,000 before the war begins, these will be out dogfighting the allies in every single situation. Of course, this is not ideal because this is just for 1936 and 1939. And top that off as well, if you want to give your plane extra agility, you want to go for the Messerschmitt designer as well, giving agility and extra speed. You have to remove something and add it on. Take advantage of the bonus here of Messerschmitt. My advice to you is do not add double armor on. Now, don't get me wrong, it's going to be better for your rubber usage. You'll have less rubber usage, but look at the maximum range you're going to get with this. It's significantly less, and that's going to result in a limited combat effectiveness overall, and it's just not something I'd recommend. And just actually work out that self-sealing fuel tanks actually have extra air defense as well. I never actually knew that. The honest truth is, this has the best possible stats because it's got great speed, it's got great air attack, it's got great agility. Sure, you can go for cannons with this, which you will research later on. See these cannons, and you do research the first one at the very start of the game. It will give you more air attack, but the truth is, with less agility, you're not going to do as well in dogfight situations. You tend to find that when you're making a specific dogfighting style fighter plane, which is going to be your bread and butter anyway, because you're going to use that in every situation where you're going to dominate the air, you want to keep the agility as high as you can possibly go. And the highest agility you can get in this circumstance is by stacking the Messerschmitt. Also, be aware of your doctrines too. If you go down the left side, strategic destruction, and you go down multi-altitude flying, you will gain a bonus of 10% for your agility, for your fighters, and also on this left side too. Also on the right side too, for operation integrity, you gain a bit of agility there as well. Now you can gain more agility by going down the middle path because you can get 20% agility for close air support. But be aware that you're going to have less air attack overall because your first slot is going to have to be a CAS. So in this case, you lose some air attack to potentially gain some agility because you're using the doctrine to boost your agility. And also be aware that the air design you get doesn't give a boost to agility for its CAS. You only gain ground attack and reliability, which is a bit mixed, really. Strange that reliability really doesn't matter for planes anymore. It used to be a factor prior to the air designer, but not anymore. Okay, so we're reaching 1939 now. Just pretend it's 1939. We would have unlocked, in this case, the improved small frame. You can get this in 1939. And there is also a chance you could get access to the engines. But the honest truth is, the engines aren't even that essential. Only if you're fully kitting out this aircraft, the improved small frame, that you're going to take advantage of it. Let's just go with the instance that you have actually researched it, because you are a die-hard air enthusiast. That's right. And in this case, small airframe, and same again. Heavy machine gun, heavy machine gun, heavy machine gun. The best possible single engine, which gives the biggest boost to speed as well as extra thrust. So you can carry more modules. Self-sealing, armor, and once again, armor. And you can see here the range is decent. Overall air attack and defense is maximized. To be fair, this is a plane that you can now use from 1939 onwards to the rest of the game. The only downside with this aircraft that can make a big impact on its ability to perform is its range is slightly more limited. So I suppose there are situations where if you want to min-max your stats better, you can go for range improvements, such as this technology here, and you can add drop pods. I think it's drop pods, drop tanks. Here we go. So this will give you an extra 300 range. Alternatively, you can see which gives you the better range overall, and it looks like it's drop tanks. To be fair, if you were to unlock the next level of fighter too, you get an extra module, and maybe stacking extra air defense might be not worthwhile in that case. In that case, you might want to add extra drop tanks on overall. This is an element a lot of the community gets confused by that just might be easy to clear it up right now. It is going to be worthwhile to add extra stats onto this aircraft by adding on cannons, and you can do that, and it will be more effective for interception and shooting down bombers, which is great. However, it's going to make the aircraft more expensive, and it's going to lose agility. So it's going to lose some of that performance in dogfighting, and then it won't be trading as effectively in dogfights. So my advice is try and keep the price down as much as possible, and that's why heavy machine guns is that sweet spot. You know, that's something I never even realized. It says when on logistical strikes, this gives +1 ground attack. I never even knew that. What I tend to do, which seems to be my go-to strategy against the AI, this is my go-to plane, my bread and butter. And when I've gained air superiority by using this plane because it's so good, late game, you'll switch out the final machine gun for a bomb lock, and now you've got your little bit of CAS. Ideally, though, you don't want to use bomb locks because whenever you're on close air support missions, you lose a lot of agility, meaning that if their planes have more agility than you, they're going to win in dogfights, which you're going to take a slightly more losses. Perfect situation when you're in more of a late game situation. We're talking 1941, 42. That's right. That's unfortunately is late game for HOI4. Is when you go here, you research the rocket first tech. No, that's right. Usually, I don't recommend rockets. Rockets are not usually my favorite, but this one instance, rockets are worth it because they unlock the rocket rails here. Can you see this? And this has the ability to do a close air support mission. Just slightly less damage. Just be aware of that. Just slightly less damage. But overall, it means when it's on close air support missions, you do not lose any agility. See that? Bomb locks, you're losing 50%, using 20 agility whenever you're doing a close air support mission or logistical strike. If you're doing a logistical strike or a close air support mission on rocket rails, you do not lose any agility. So this is the perfect plane to transition into once you've gained air superiority. Another piece of advice I think is really important as well is don't do logistical strikes. They nerfed them so badly in the last patch that they're just not as effective as they used to be. The only instance, which is a rare one, where logistical strikes are worth it, is if you are doing a logistical strike in an air zone that doesn't have any AA. 505, and then Luxembourg 05. So potentially I could do a logistical strike here if I have air superiority. If I didn't have air superiority, it probably wouldn't be worth it. But overall here, you would kill a lot of trucks and a lot of trains, potentially weakening supply structure of the allies, for instance. Now, for instance, here, I wouldn't really want to do logistical strike because Paris has got some AA, and AA, ground-based static AA, absolutely chews up planes on logistical missions. So my advice to you is do not do that. Do not let the Alsace-Lorraine has got 5 AA as well. Just don't do that. It's just not worth it. From my experimentation, it's just not worth the trade. So just don't do it. Is it worth it to make planes only for CAS? Do you know, I've not tested that since the plane designer. In the old version, it was really effective. But since the latest version, I've not tested it. So I actually don't know the answer to that question. I wonder if it's a strategy. I'd like to test this out. So instead of making one of these with a double heavy machine gun, where they're making one with a bomb lock, maybe? And then just trying to go for a meta design with armor plates and self-sealing, which were right on the threshold. 13 weight, 16 thrust. And trying to make a lot of these and just seeing how effective they are by having a critical mass of them. But to be fair, with everything in HOI, if you make enough of a certain unit, you're eventually going to break through anyway. So I would say this would work, but would you want to do it? I don't know, it's up to you. So next up, tactical bombers. Now, it's important we mention this because tactical bombers used to be really effective due to their range bonuses. But the problem with tactical bomber airframes is they're just so unbelievably expensive. So if we want to go really, really dirty cheap, we could put on the weakest possible engine. We could add on a bomb bay, and then we could add machine guns on potentially. So it's basically a tactical bomber that has lots of fighting capabilities. And you don't want to go for a really big engine because the engines go up in cost massively. Look, so this one's cost 24, 28, 32. But remember, this is per plane. Don't forget that. So the cost is going to go up exponentially. In this case, we go for self-sealing, and then we add on more armor, I presume. Oh, it hasn't got enough thrust now, so we'd have to up the engines anyway. Yeah, we'd have to go for a big engine. Oh, that really sucks. Difference between engine 2 thrust is 24 versus 45. Wow. I don't lie, though. The capabilities, the amount of damage this can do is pretty high. And the agility isn't too bad either. I've lost some agility because I'm doing a close air support mission, I believe. Because I've lost 5 agility. Where's that from? It's just having the bomb bay. Okay. I can't recommend this really because the problem is this is a plane that does too much and it ends up costing too much. So it's just not really worth the cost. This is the only way I feel like this would be cost effective, by focusing on machine guns. Then maybe some armor. Then you have to take off the machine gun. So that's the way it would work. The reason why I'm not too confident with this design is I think it's lacking in so many areas. And once again, I feel like if you made a cast that's specifically for cast missions or a fighter that's specifically for air superiority, it would do a significantly better job than what this aircraft could do. Even though this aircraft has the ability to do a lot, such as air superiority, close air support, interception, strategic bombing, port strikes. The bit that confuses me too is these turrets make you lose agility, but you gain air attack. Or you can just have the machine guns on, which don't lose your agility. I always think to myself, what's the point? Do these weigh less? Weight 1. Okay, they do weigh less. That's a factor, maybe. Very few times you come close to the actual weight thrust limit to become a problem, so I'm not even sure why that'd be an issue. The honest truth, guys, is I can't recommend tactical bombers, medium bombers anymore. They're just never cost effective for what you're going to be doing for. There used to be a heavy fighter meta where you would focus on cannons. Oh my god, so many cannons. You would do something like this, and this is specifically heavy fighter interceptor, and the job of this is basically to down bombers. It's basically an anti-bomber fighter. And this would do a really awesome job for that. However, if it's in a situation where it's going to be fighting other fighters, it's going to do a terrible job. 1 agility basically has a turning circle of basically the entirety of Europe. That's how I imagine agility in my mind. Agility is kind of like the turning circle, how quickly it can bank and how quickly it can turn. And if an aircraft's incredibly heavy, its ability to turn rapidly and quickly is going to be limited. Hence the reason why it would die in a dogfight. Once again, when would you ever make this? In an AI game? You probably wouldn't. But it'd be very useful to use it against strategic bombers in a multiplayer game, for instance. Because you're basically anti-multiplayer style plane. But once again, it's so expensive. When would it ever be useful? I just don't know. So something I've never realized recently is that there are a bunch of machine guns that give bonuses to logistical ground strikes. So look, Cannon 2s give +2 to ground attack. This is something I must have sneaked in because I wasn't aware of this. So I was just asking, is radio navigation useful for fighters? Radio navigation is the bottom slots and it gives the ability to reduce the night penalty. It's only a 10% reduction, I believe, so I don't think it's worth it now. It costs too much. It uses up a module slot, and the penalty, the reduction is not very high, so it's not worth. Yeah, it's one of these ones. Yeah, it's this one. Radio navigation 2 reduces night penalty by 20%. So this potentially can be used on fighters to gain a slight edge on night missions. It'd be an interesting strategy, wouldn't it? Like, this plane only operates at night. Just something people have forgotten about. You bet you even forgot this button even exists here. Where is it? Here we go. Operates on missions on day and night. You specifically say day or night. So you could specifically make a fighter that's only meant to be used at night that's got that radio navigation. That'll be interesting to see the stats on that. However, I think the large airframes have a purpose. I think you reach a certain point that if you manage to make an extremely expensive heavy airframe, you're in a situation you can do some incredibly high damage. The way it would work, this is how I imagine in my mind this would work, is you go super heavy on the armor. Oh my goodness, the armor. And then you focus not as heavily on the strategic bombing element. Look at the production cost, 136. Each one piece of armor adds extra 5 production costs on. It feels like it defeats the purpose in a way because the range is so much more limited. But at the end of the day, the worst thing you want to happen in the world is these guys get shot down, so they're so expensive. So you want to focus on survivability. Let's just look at this boyo. It's just so unbelievably expensive. It makes me wonder, like, how long it would take to produce one of these. So with 1 mil attached and lack of rubber as well, you produce one of these a year. Well, 1.5 a year. Okay, that is going up significantly more with more retention. So just to summarize, overall, the best possible fighter you can get is going to be this one for specifically dogfighting and getting air superiority. If you're in a late game situation where you have air superiority, you want to mix in some cast and therefore do actual damage. In this case, rocket rails is a really good addition to maintain that air superiority and do lots of cast damage. I can't recommend, unfortunately, medium airframes. It also feels a little bit like cast. Just regular cast feels like it's become redundant because technically a fighter can do cast now, so why not make fighter bombers versus pure cast based planes? The stats are very similar anyway, so what's the point? Yeah, once again, mediums, I can't recommend them. And if you're going to go for a strategic bomber for the memes, my advice to you is try and go for as heavy armor as possible. Also, one thought too is you probably want to add on a little bit of machine gun damage. Oh, there is no machine guns, so in this case you would have to add on a little bit of MG damage just to give it a little bit of air attack, and that air attack will give it a little bit of ability to do damage to fighters. But it makes me wonder, you know, if the damage to fighters is so low, whether it's even worth it. But overall, I think it'd be more well-rounded if it also did a little bit of air attack as well, stacking the defense. I'm almost certain this plane has so much defense that its capabilities of getting shot down are very, very, very low. I think the ground-based AA is what's going to be the big factor. So from testing, they've actually found out that ground-based AA, there are no planes there are no stats on a plane. I'll get this eventually. There are no stats on a plane that will reduce the ability to get shot down from static AA. So it makes me even wonder whether this is even a viable strategy to work on a super expensive bomber like this. Makes me think, and the price cost for this is just so insane as well. Strategic bombing only. Does it actually work? That'll make a really cool video, right? I've answered all your questions regarding Navy. I suppose one other thing as well is naval bombers as well. I find that when you make a naval bomber and you make them super cheap, you can knock out a lot of submarines and do a lot of damage. So navs are back in fashion, boys. So in this case, you put on a single torpedo. That's the only thing you're ever going to need. You try and make it as cheap as possible. There are a bunch of things that give more naval targeting that tend to be quite useful as well, such as dive break. I think floats does it as well. Gives extra surface detection. These are extra bonuses you can give. And what you could do is assign 2 mils for this plane for the rest of the game and just continuously keep bombing sea zones. Be aware, if there's air superiority over a sea zone, this isn't going to do anything. You'll lose all these instantly. So just be aware of that. One thing I've not tried out much is naval patrol. I've never needed to use it, so in that case, I don't know, is it any good? I'm not sure. But overall, that's a really good naval bomber for the purpose of striking the sea and knocking out those excess ships. You obviously, what I said to you, you sign a few mils to this and just producing the rest of the game, and that should be useful. As I answered all your questions, guys, regarding planes and the most optimal designs, be aware this is looking through a single player mindset, playing on a historical mindset, and playing against the AI. If you've not already guessed, that's what single player means. Obviously, multiplayer is a completely different situation. If you enjoy more of these style videos, don't forget to like and subscribe and comment below with some other mechanic in the game you'd like me to talk about. Give this video a go. This one. This is part 2.